Good morning, traders and investors around the world, and welcome to premarketinfo.com, where we prepare you for the most important hour of the day. Dennis got a nice 20-point range in the S&Ps overnight. Couldn't quite get to yesterday's low, and got a little pop to 1229.75. If that holds as the high of the day, we have a downside target at 1199.50. If this 1209 holds up, we have an upside target of 1239.25. The stock's trading up modestly this morning, Dennis.
Yeah, actually, looking at your blog there from yesterday, Joel, I actually blogged that right before the market sell-off, so it was a pretty good call. But that 1208 number that you talked about in that blog, we kind of bounced right off that area. So, whether that's going to hold a second time around if we go and test, I don't know, but it definitely held yesterday, trading 1223. So again, a nice lift here overnight.
Yeah, kind of touched the bottom of that rising wedge that we talked about. So we'll see how that carries out over the next couple days. Moving on to the Big 10, Apple Computer traded as low as 375.5, rebounded to that 377.41 close. Trading up almost 3.5 points this morning. Don't see much on the upside until Thursday's high at 384.58. Above that, it really opens up. Coming back on the downside with it being up 3.5 already. I imagine we'll run into support perhaps at that 380 before we get to the close at 377.41.
Yeah, it was a disaster day for Apple really yesterday, obviously giving back the whole gain from a couple days prior. That 391 area that we had talked about a couple days ago obviously held. Stock's chart doesn't look good, making that new low yesterday at 375.50, so I still think you got to sell rallies in this. The only trouble is there's not much in there between 381. You could say, okay, yesterday's high 384.50, you could maybe use that. But I don't know if the stock's gonna even get that high. Obviously gets up to the 390 area, it's gonna be major resistance up there, but, it's hard to pick your point, but I still think rallies are to be sold in this one.
Any news in Apple yesterday, or not really?
There's always news in Apple. It's hard to say whether it's technical movement or fun. There was no major moves. There was some, stuff with iPad, but you bring up a news filter on Apple, there seems to be news every 20 minutes. So, there was nothing that really jumped out at me, though. I think it was more technical. Obviously, the market's selling off as well.
Okay, ExxonMobil flirted with that $77 level, making a low at $77.10, closing in $77.86. Trading up 70 cents here, 78.56, kind of in nowhere, no man's land here. Thursday's high did come down off that 80 level, 79.43 high. So, it's getting stiff, then. It's anywhere above 79.5 to 80. It just seems like people are trying to wiggle out of some longs in that area.
Yeah, the triple top there from from 4 or 5 days ago, 3 tops on the high 79s. Didn't quite get there, 79.42, but if you were aggressive, you may have got off a nice short again. The rallies just keep getting met with sellers on this one. The thing gets into the 79s, and I think you still have to be a seller.
Okay, IBM retreated from that 190 level. Just doesn't seem like someone wanted to test that all-time high there at 190.53. Broke down to 183.39. Recovered to settle at 185.73. You just talk about nowhere to go in this stock. It's kind of open up to Thursday's high at 188.83. If we go into sell-off mode, I see minor support at the settlement, 185.73, and Thursday's low, which has been the low for the week, at 183.39.
Very large range for IBM yesterday, 5 points. Been a while since we've seen a 5-point range in IBM. You got to be a seller in the high 180, and especially in the 189s. That's where they keep selling. The stock didn't quite get there yesterday, but 3-4 days in a row. That 190 seller that we had been talking about, obviously he never got touched, and the high frequency guys and the swing traders are selling in front of him in the high 189s. So anywhere in the 189s, this stock is probably still a sell. I'm scared to buy this thing. I think it was a breakdown yesterday. We're getting a bounce, we're getting a lift, but I kind of just think this is more of a bounce, and I wouldn't be surprised if this rally does not hold.
Okay, Microsoft, I guess that little, flash crash in the pre-market was a little premonition of things to come during the day. You had the classic, opening up at the previous day's low, not able to hold that for just 1 second. Broke down, settled at 25.44. Actually did not recover like the SPUs did, settling at 25.54. So good support there at that 25.5 level, and I don't see much resistance going back up to Thursday's high. So let's call the range in Microsoft today 25.45 to 25.95.
Yeah, the interesting high yesterday, 26.04. Like we had talked about for the last month, that this 26 was pretty good support. Obviously breaking down. You'd think if it rallies back up there, that should become some resistance. The only problem is that, it's really broken down from the last 3 days from 27. So I don't know how much resistance you're going to get there at 26, but it should be the first stopping point. Obviously the whole numbers usually come into play on Microsoft. So we'll say maybe if it fell another 60 cents, you might see some buyers at the 25, but I don't think that's as large of a level as that 26 was.
Okay, Chevron Corporation just quietly marched itself down from 110 down to the $100 level. Did take that out to make a low at 98.75, so a couple points away from there, so that should be good support, as well as the close at 100.08. Not much on the upside as far as resistance. You got Wednesday's close at 101 at 101.05 is minor resistance, but get a nice rally in the stocks this morning. I look for a test of yesterday's high at 102.13.
Man, this is a tough one, Joel. It's kind of wide open everywhere when you look at this chart. So I'm sitting on my hands on this one. I just don't see, a low risk trade on either side. Obviously from a day trading perspective, sometimes some levels can be there. But, if you're looking a little longer term out, this is a little tricky one. Obviously gets up to, that 105 area again. We're $4 away from there. So I doubt that comes into play. But options expiration a day, you can see a lot of volatility. So you never know. If it was to get up that, then there might be a sell up there, but buying this thing, especially after it broke down through that 100 yesterday, is kind of scary.
Okay, moving on to J&J, opened up right at those old lows. 64.40 was the close from Wednesday, 64.32 high. That did break down as well. Couldn't quite get to the weekly low, 63.30. I noticed that had a nice pop on the close there. Big MOC buy order to close at 73.94. Not much up until that previous day's high at 64.32. Should be rough sledding all the way up to 64.51. Coming back on the downside between that 63.30 and 63.10 should be excellent support.
Did get a little pop there to 63.94, I think you meant, Joel. But yeah, right off the close, popping up there 20 cents. Mid 64s, this thing keeps getting met with sellers as well. Obviously up at 65, there's some major resistance up there too. So, anything for you can start getting above 64.5, this thing starts to thicken up.
Procter Gamble, kind of the same situation. Thursday's high, very close to Wednesday's close, 63.65 high. Broke down, couldn't quite test that 10-day low at 62.37. I believe we had mentioned the clusters of lows between 62.50 and 62.70. So it got to that lower end of the range, recovered on the day to settle at 62.94. Really pretty open, Dennis, up to the 63.5 level, and pretty open on the downside down to the 62.5 level.
Well, you talked about wedges in the overall market. If you look at the last month of trading in Procter & Gamble, and even if you can look back, there is a wedge starting to form there as well, and it was starting to break through the lower end of that range yesterday. It gets up in that 63.5 area, it starts getting the upper end. You see the wedge I'm talking about there, Joe, in the last month? So if it starts to get up into those high 63s, it gets into the upper end of that wedge. We're 62.94. The market's up 9 points. Option expiration opens up into those high 63s. You'd be selling in the upper end of that wedge, which may not be that bad of a play. Above 64, then, all bets are off. But you're going to see some resistance probably in the high 63s.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a break below 62.5 in this thing, and the stock could be in trouble. Moving on to our next component, AT&T. Made a low of 28.43, a fresh low for multi-day low in that stock. Recovered to settle at 28.61. If you're looking for a stock to short off the open, it looks like we're going to be opening right into Thursday's high at 28.85. Coming back on the downside, since we're up 20 cents, we got support at the close, as well as Thursday's low at 28.43. Below that, things open up to the $28 level.
Yeah, $29 I would say is a little bit, obviously 28.85 the high yesterday. That 29 was support for so long. You got to think that's going to be resistance too. So call it 28.85 all the way to that 29. There should be some good resistance up there. So if it does open in that area, maybe that, provides resistance. Major resistance up to 29.5. But, a 70-cent move for AT&T is tough to make, so it probably doesn't come into play today.
Okay, GE, after unable to hold the $16 level, previous support, popped above it, early in the session, got to 16.05. Pretty good range in, GE for the day, getting as low as 15.5, coming back to recover at 15.64. So really, not much resistance up to the $16 area, and, good support forming at 15.5.
Well, we got lucky to have this one yesterday talking about, the breakdown through 16. That's exactly what happened with that head and shoulders pattern that we had talked about. Your new range on this, I'm going to say, is $16 to sell on the high side, and I wouldn't be a buyer until that 15 area on the downside, because that was the area back in August through September. We were calling it channelingstocks.com if you weren't listening to the show back then. I think that could be the new range again here, so I'd be a seller in the high 15s and a buyer in the low 15s.
Okay, Coca-Cola, broke down yesterday, tested, that low back from October 10th of 66.01, got to 66.10, got a nice pop at the end of the day to settle at 66.59. Things are pretty open, Dennis, up to Thursday's high at 67.39. And then coming back on the downside, you got to respect that close here since we're trading up 36 cents. Mild support at the close at 66.59, with major support coming in at the $66 level.
There was another wedge forming in Coca-Cola as well. Yesterday definitely broke the bottom end of that wedge. So if you wonder if we rally up to where that wedge was, which was those numbers you just talked about in the low to mid 67s, if you're going to see some sellers up there that are trying to sneak out.
Okay, just a quick recap of the S&Ps here, just meandering around the 1224 level. Looks like we need to stay above this 1219 to 1220 level to be poised to test that Globex high. Really not much below the that mid-range down to the close at 1214 to 75. Remember, we got expiration today, so look for some good movement off the open. That's the first portion of our show. We'll be back with our market movers.